The cycle is, let's say, my parents' generation, they were through 2 decades of depression and war. So they have depression and war, and they come out of that with the realization that they don't need luxuries, that they were just, if they they want to save to make sure the downside doesn't happen. And of course, at that point, essentially, they're over-saving, and that's because there's no debt. You've wiped out the debt. The cycle is beginning to move up again. Then there is the positive reinforcement of the cycle. Times become better, and you get used to the time becoming better. So you go through that cycle, the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, each one of those, it becomes better, and you become that more distant from the negative experience and more confident. And more confident, meaning that what's saving for? Saving is because you worry that the future will be worse than the past. So you save in order to protect that. So saving becomes less important as your living standards. You said, I can afford, I can enjoy life more. And then borrowing. Who is doing well then? It's the person who's borrowing to buy financial investments, or they buy their house. The house goes up. And you look at your neighbors and you say, that's the thing to do. And then we go through that cycle. And through that cycle, debt rises faster than income. And as debt rises faster than income and reaches its limits, then we go through the cycle again, right? And so, because these come along once in a lifetime, and so we didn't experience them. So it's another one of those, right?
रे डालियो एक अमेरिकी अरबपति निवेशक, हेज फंड मैनेजर और लेखक हैं, जो दुनिया के सबसे बड़े हेज फंड में से एक ब्रिजवाटर एसोसिएट्स के संस्थापक के रूप में जाने जाते हैं। उनका जन्म 8 अगस्त 1949 को यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स में हुआ था। उन्हें बहुत कम उम्र से ही निवेश में रुचि हो गई थी। केवल 12 साल की उम्र में उन्होंने अपना पहला स्टॉक खरीदा था, जो नॉर्थ ईस्ट एयरलाइंस का था। बाद में एक मर्जर के बाद उस कंपनी के शेयर की कीमत लगभग 3 गुना हो गई, जिससे उन्हें शेयर बाजार के काम करने का पहला बड़ा अनुभव मिला। 1975 में रे डालियो ने अपने छोटे से अपार्टमेंट से ब्रिजवाटर एसोसिएट्स की शुरुआत की। समय के साथ ये एक बड़ी वैश्विक निवेश कंपनी बन गई, जो सरकारों, सेंट्रल बैंकों और पेंशन फंड जैसे संस्थानों के लिए सैकड़ों अरब डॉलर का पैसा मैनेज करती है। रे डालियो को वैश्विक अर्थव्यवस्था, कर्ज के चक्र यानी डेट साइकिल्स और लंबी अवधि के आर्थिक पैटर्न को समझने के लिए खास तौर पर जाना जाता है। उन्होंने ऑल वेदर पोर्टफोलियो नाम की एक प्रसिद्ध निवेश रणनीति भी बनाई, जिसे इस तरह डिज़ाइन किया गया है कि ये अलग अलग आर्थिक परिस्थितियों जैसे महंगाई, मंदी और आर्थिक विकास के समय भी अच्छा प्रदर्शन कर सके। निवेश के अलावा वे एक प्रसिद्ध लेखक और विचारक भी हैं। उन्होंने अपनी निर्णय लेने की सोच और जीवन के सिद्धांतों को अपनी किताबों में साझा किया है, जैसे प्रिंसिपल्स लाइफ एंड वर्क, प्रिंसिपल्स फॉर नेविगेटिंग बिग डेट क्राइसिस और द चेंजिंग वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर। उनकी विचारधारा में रैडिकल ट्रांसपेरेंसी यानी संगठन में पूरी पारदर्शिता, गलतियों से सीखना और भावनाओं के बजाय डेटा और तर्क के आधार पर फैसले लेना शामिल है। अपनी सफलता और वैश्विक वित्तीय दुनिया में प्रभाव के कारण रे डालियो को आधुनिक समय के सबसे महत्वपूर्ण निवेशकों और आर्थिक विचारकों में से एक माना जाता है।
Ray Dalio designed it to be an idea meritocracy and says the key is a process he calls believability-weighted decision-making.
I should explain believability-weighted decision-making to you if you're interested.
I think I have an idea about what it means, but go ahead.
Okay, so ordinarily, there are 2 ways of making decisions, pretty much. There's the boss has control, and so
autocratic,
right? I'll call that autocratic. Takes in everything and then he makes a decision. Or there's democratic, pretty much, one man, one vote. But really, the best decision-making is believability-weighted decision-making. And if you think about it first conceptually, you would say, if you're going to make a decision of what you have a medical condition, and how are you going to get that? You're going to think, who are the best doctors?
Consult the experts, right?
Consult the experts, but this one knows more and that one knows more. less, and how do you do it? And then you have this triangulation, and then you make that. That's kind of the idea of believability decision making. We have ways of assigning believability that we all agree are fair, that we each assess each other, and we get certain amount of believability points. So now imagine that you had believability, your believability on a subject matter. Maybe it's investing, maybe it's accounting, whatever the subject is, that you have a certain amount of believability weighted points and you're together. Well, those believability weighted points, when you say, okay, what should I make as a decision? Now I'm responsible for something, but I ask everybody else, and I take a believability weighted vote. I can have a believability weighted vote. When I have that believability weighted vote, I really do believe that it's going to be a better decision than I would individually make. That's believability weighted decision making. And it's fantastic when you have independent thinkers. In order to be successful in the markets or as an entrepreneur, one has to be an independent thinker that makes decisions better than the consensus decisions.
It's fair.
In the markets, the consensus is built into the price.
It's beta.
Yeah. So now you have to bet against the consensus to make money. Therefore, you have to be an independent thinker. The best dynamic is to have a bunch of independent thinkers. Now you've got a bunch of independent thinkers. How are they going to have thoughtful disagreement and get past those disagreements? How we have done that is the key to our success, and it's outlined in the book.
रे डालियो की सबसे महत्वपूर्ण उपलब्धि ब्रिज वाटर एसोसिएट्स की स्थापना करना और उसे दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा हेज फंड बनाना है। उन्होंने 1975 में न्यूयॉर्क में अपने छोटे से अपार्टमेंट से इस फर्म की शुरुआत की थी। शुरुआत में ये एक छोटा सलाहकार व्यवसाय था, लेकिन धीरे धीरे ये बढ़ता गया और बाद में पेंशन फंड, सेंट्रल बैंक और बड़े संस्थागत निवेशकों के पैसे को मैनेज करने लगा। ब्रिज वाटर मुख्य रूप से ग्लोबल मैक्रो निवेश रणनीति के लिए जाना जाता है, जिसमें अर्थव्यवस्था के बड़े कारकों जैसे ब्याज दर, महंगाई, आर्थिक चक्र और सरकारी नीतियों का विश्लेषण किया जाता है। रे डालियो के नेतृत्व में कंपनी ने डेटा और ऐतिहासिक आर्थिक पैटर्न के आधार पर व्यवस्थित रिसर्च और निवेश मॉडल विकसित किए। उनसे जुड़ा एक प्रसिद्ध विचार ऑल वेदर पोर्टफोलियो है, जिसे अलग अलग आर्थिक परिस्थितियों में जोखिम को संतुलित रखने के लिए बनाया गया था। 2010 के दशक तक ब्रिज वाटर दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा हेज फंड बन गया और समय के साथ अपने निवेशकों के लिए बहुत बड़ा कुल मुनाफा पैदा किया। उद्योग की कई रैंकिंग्स में ब्रिज वाटर को उन हेज फंड्स में गिना गया है जिन्होंने अपने निवेशकों के लिए सबसे अधिक कुल लाभ कमाया है। बाद के वर्षों में रे डालियो ने अपने अनुभव और निर्णय लेने के सिद्धांतों को किताबों में भी साझा किया, जिनमें प्रिंसिपल्स, लाइफ एंड वर्क प्रमुख है।
We were preparing to offer to pay off the debt of Mexico. You had predicted the same thing occurring, late 70s, early 80s. Take us back to that point in time. What are the lessons learned?
It was my biggest lesson at the time. I went through the calculations, and it was a very controversial point of view that these countries would not be able to pay their debts. And events started to transpire, and Mexico defaulted in August of 1982. And because I had anticipated that, and I got a lot of attention, I was, a young guy, and I was asked to speak to Congress and explain to them what was going on, and I was on Wall Street Week. And
if you want to see Ray, you can go to a YouTube video that's from a TED Talk that you could see him testifying.
Go to the TED Talk. You'll see that moment. And that moment, I'm testifying to Congress on Wall Street Week, and I figure we're going to have a hell of a debt crisis, and the economy's going down. And that was the exact bottom in the stock market. I couldn't have been more wrong. I was so wrong. I had a small company then. I had, I think it was probably like 7, 8 people or so. These were close people. I had to let them go. I was so broke that I had to borrow $4,000 from my dad to help to pay for my family bills. This was one of the most painful experiences.
How much money were you managing at that time?
Oh, I mean, nothing. I can't remember, but not much. And I scrapped myself up to that point, and it was the most painful and probably the best, most valuable experience I ever had in my life, because it changed my approach to decision making. I went from thinking I'm right to thinking, how do I know I'm right? It gave me the humility that I needed to balance with my audacity. It made me start to think, it made me want to find out the smartest people who disagreed with me and to understand their reasoning, have thoughtful disagreement. It led to me, it was the reason we wanted to make this idea meritocracy. It was the main reason. Like, give me the smartest people I can have around me, and let's have those arguments, and how do we get past those? And it led to the idea meritocratic. And it was really from that point forward knowing how to balance risk, like we talked about going into the Trump election, trying to make sure you balance risk, but also it taught me about looking at history, that the surprises that I had were things that happened in history but never happened in my lifetime before. Like I was clerking on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange in 1971 when the dollar was floated. And so I walked on the floor of the stock exchange, and people wouldn't accept dollars in the money. And I figured, okay, we're at major crisis, and the stock market went up, and I thought it was going to go down a lot. This is when I was in college, and I realized that when I went back, that there were devaluations that happened not in my lifetime before, but happened before. So it was to know that everything happens over and over again. These were the lessons. Lessons are the ability to have thoughtful disagreement, so to raise the probabilities of being right, to find the smartest people who disagree with you and understand their reasoning, to know how to balance the bets well, so that there's no one bet that becomes an important thing and you become dominated in an election or anything else. And also to go to history, that if things happened in the past or in some other country and you don't understand them, then you're going to be in trouble. So you need to have timeless rules and universal rules. So we have a criteria that all of our decision rules have got to be timeless and universal. So those are the lessons that I took out of that very painful experiences, and that's really what has served me and Bridgewater well since then.